Okay, imagine this scenario. A massive storm, maybe a hurricane or severe ice, hits your area, power lines are down everywhere, homes go dark, roads are just a mess. Now, for the utility crews trying to fix things, the biggest headache isn't always just the repair itself. It's figuring out, well, what was even there before the storm hit? See, without really accurate, up-to-date records of every single pole, every line, all the equipment, rebuilding becomes a total nightmare. And that's not just inconvenient, right? It can cost millions. It delays recovery. It can even be a safety issue. But what if? What if you could get ahead of that chaos before the disaster even strikes? That's exactly what we're digging into today. There's this company, Fast Forward, and they seem to be really shaking up how electric utilities and municipalities handle this surprisingly tricky problem, documenting all that power infrastructure. So our mission for this deep dive, we want to unpack how their vehicle-based tech works, how it's not just preventing outages or speeding up insurance claims after a disaster, but maybe fundamentally changing how we think about infrastructure resilience.
We've looked at their company info, recent news updates, things like that, to piece this together. Okay, let's unpack this.
Yeah, it's fascinating, isn't it? Because this task, documentation, it sounds kind of mundane, but it's so foundational to, well, modern life working.
Yeah.
Utilities manage these huge, complex networks, and historically, keeping track of it all, especially getting ready for things you can't predict, like wildfires, hurricanes, bad winter storms. That's been a massive and very, very manual job.
Exactly. Let's paint that before picture a bit more. You mentioned wildfires. So say a utility has to rebuild miles of lines after a fire. If they don't have solid before records, it's incredibly tough for the mutual aid crews coming in. They don't know the area right. Plus, it really complicates insurance claims.
Yeah.
How do you prove you weren't negligent if you don't know exactly what was there and its condition? Or think about a hurricane path like hundreds of miles long. Documenting the damage across that whole system is painfully slow work. It ties up people and equipment you desperately need for actual repairs.
Yeah.
In winter, snow, ice. It makes routine patrols dangerous. It hides the ground, the terrain the crews need to see.
That really shows the scale, doesn't it? And it brings up a really important point, or maybe a question. What are the real bottom line limitations and costs for utilities using those older manual methods? I mean, we're not just talking about shuffling papers here. This hits their finances hard. It affects safety for crews, for the public, and it's about how they use their, very specialized resources efficiently. Delays, higher operating costs, and maybe worst of all, having incomplete or just plain wrong data. Those are the direct hits.
Right. So given all that, these ongoing high-stakes problems, how is Fast Forward changing things? Their main thing seems to be this autonomous vehicle-based technology, purpose-built for power line documentation and inspection. The idea is to bring, well, a whole new level of efficiency and scale to this process that's always been slow. They have a few specific tech solutions they talk about. First, there's their thermal system. They call it CTI, Continuous Thermal Imaging. This is autonomous, vehicle-based, apparently patent pending. And it does automated thermal scans of power lines while the vehicle is just driving down the road. The metric they boast is pretty impressive. Over 5,000 poles scanned per day.
Oh, wow.
And there's the high-resolution one, CVI, Continuous Visual Inspection. Again, autonomous vehicle-based. This gets super detailed pictures. They claim it's the fastest CVI for utility distribution systems. And lastly, Groundline 360.
Yeah.
This creates a full 360-degree panoramic view of the entire service area, like Google Street View, but for the utility network. Refreshed annually, covers everything: highways, dirt roads, alleys, and unlimited people can access the data.
Yeah, and connecting that back to the bigger operational picture, it really shows a smart focus on scale, especially for all that infrastructure you can actually reach from a road, which is, let's face it, a lot of it. This automated data gathering directly tackles those manual problems we were just talking about.
Okay.
What's also interesting is their claim about coverage rate. They say the vehicle tech covers 25 times more ground than drones for line patrol, specifically for those roadside poles. That's not just a number. It shows they understand where most of the assets are and how to check them efficiently, maybe more practically than always relying on aerial stuff.
And it's more than just taking pictures, right? They talk about automated line patrol. Get this, one operator, one vehicle solution, inspecting over 30,000 poles a week. That massively simplifies how utilities document their regular line patrols. What seems really smart, though, is that this same process helps them do other things at the same time, like cleaning up their GIS data, the map data utilities use.
Right, the geographic information systems, crucial stuff.
And building system inventories, implementing inspections, it's all happening simultaneously.
Yeah.
Like a Swiss Army knife for managing infrastructure info.
That really raises a key point, doesn't it, about data management. It's so critical now with utilities drowning in big data. Fast Forward apparently handles the back-end stuff, processing the images, hosting them securely, and what the utility gets is a straightforward report for each structure, something they can easily import into whatever GIS software they already use. They claim this cuts down the raw data by over 70%, but still gives all the actionable info. That kind of efficient data handling is vital.
Right.
You need to turn mountains of data into actual insights you can use.
Okay, so let's bring it back to that core benefit, the pre-disaster documentation. This whole system seems tailor-made to tackle those specific disaster challenges we mentioned. Wildfires. Having those before photos and data makes rebuilding way easier for outside crews. And it's huge for the claims process, helping utilities show they weren't negligent. Hurricanes. It solves that slow documentation problem across huge areas, frees up resources for actual repairs.
Makes sense.
And winter storms. It gives crews that visibility of the terrain, even when it's covered in snow and ice, makes their patrols safer, more efficient.
And what's really compelling, I think, is the shift towards prevention. It's not just about response anymore. Fast Forward actually claims they've prevented hundreds of power outages using their tech. That thermal camera system, patrolling hundreds of miles a night, it finds tiny issues, potential failures, before they cause a blackout. That move from just reacting to crises to actively preventing them, that's a really big deal for grid reliability.
Yeah, definitely. And they seem to be thinking about the folks on the ground, too, the linemen. It's designed to be practical. They can just build this documentation into their normal patrols.
Right.
Fast Forward can supply the UTVs, the utility terrain vehicles already equipped, or they can put the gear on the utility's existing vehicles, and the data just flows into the utility's current systems. Less disruption, hopefully.
And just looking at what the company's been up to recently, it seems like they're gaining real momentum. Their news feed shows quite a bit of activity, like their operations manager got an award recently. That signals they're running things well.
Good sign.
They've been hiring journeymen, developers, investing in both field work and the tech itself. Internal promotions, too, expanding their team there in Kearney, Nebraska. And interestingly, a global entrepreneur just joined their board. That suggests maybe bigger ambitions, wider reach.
Right, strategic thinking.
They keep talking about continued growth, projects scaling up nationally. Seems like utilities are buying in. And if you connect that growth back to the core problem, it really points to a big unmet need in the market, doesn't it? There was this quote from a utility person back in late 2024, something like, "I wish we had before photos." And that just sums it up perfectly. It captures that long-standing frustration their documentation solves. So Fast Forward isn't just offering a gadget. They're filling this critical gap that's been a headache for utilities for, well, decades probably.
And it's interesting, just as a side note, their platform is apparently built on HubSpot, which you usually think of for sales and marketing.
Yeah, CRM platform.
Right. Maybe that points to how they think about scalable solutions, customer focus, keeping their own operations efficient. Just a thought. So wrapping this all up, what's the big takeaway here?
Well, I think this raises an important question for you, the listener, to consider. This whole shift, moving towards proactive, automated management of infrastructure. It fundamentally changes the game for reliability, for resilience of our power grid. It's taking utilities from being mostly reactive, fixing things after they break, to being much more predictive, much more preventative. And in a world with more extreme weather and other uncertainties, that's absolutely vital.
Yeah, totally. Just think about the long-term ripple effects. What happens to insurance rates for utilities, public safety, how we decide where to invest in infrastructure? If every utility had this kind of detailed pre-disaster knowledge and proactive maintenance capability, and maybe pushing it further, how could this kind of shift in utility operations influence other sectors? Think about pipelines, railroads, communication networks, any industry with vast critical infrastructure that needs inspection and documentation. It really makes you think, doesn't it? How this type of innovation is redefining what's even possible for maintaining the essential systems we all rely on every single day.